Every day, 911 telecommunicators answer calls from individuals under the influence of drugs and or alcohol. These calls are often unpredictable, emotional, and at times dangerous, not only for the caller, but for the responders en route. Callers may be extremely agitated, uncooperative, or even hallucinating, and it is the 911 operator's job to figure out what is truly going on. But how can they make sense of an addict's topsy-turvy world? This is Lifeline. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Lifeline 911 with your host, Erica.
Hello.
I'm your co-host, Gary, and today we are discussing how to take calls from callers who may be inebriated or under the influence of other such fun chemicals. Uh,
Chemicals.
don't do drugs, kids.
Yeah.
When you get a 911 call, even under the best of circumstances, it can really be a challenge because, people are amped up, they're scared, they're even just dialing 911 for 99% of people kind of makes your blood kind of race and you get a little
Sure.
nervous. So,
Yeah.
how, like, how can call takers even begin to sort of start to get through to people that might be intoxicated or under the influence of some sort of medication or drug they ought not to be on?
Yeah. I think, as you were doing the intro, I had no idea what was going to be the first thing I was going to say, and it just popped into my head. No judgment.
Okay.
I would say, because for one, so we know they're intoxicated, or probably, there's a good chance they haven't made some great choices. But it's important that we don't sit in a place of judgment as we attempt to take their call. And by that, I mean, we don't assume that they're automatically in the wrong because they're under the influence of something. We don't know what the circumstances are, um, or we don't know what circumstances took place to put them in that position. So I think for me, the first piece of advice I would offer is get rid of your judgment or suppress it, clamp it down, you know, toss it, something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just as, Planet Fitness says, it's a judgment-free zone.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, you've got to understand that your job as the call taker is not to pass judgment on the people that call in because you're going to get a lot of people who will test that from time to time,
Absolutely.
either from something they've done or maybe how they're treating you or others. But your job is to get help where it needs to go as quickly as
Mhm.
possible. And if you have a tone of judgment towards someone, it's going to make them close up to you and not give you the information you need and cooperate with you as well as they could.
Yeah. And judgment, sitting in a place of, or allowing yourself to go to a place of judgment, it it hinders your ability to listen well, I
Mm-hmm.
think, because we listen for a living, all of us, whether you're, regardless of what side of the radio you are on. If you're a call taker, you're listening to my I won't go into it, but we listen to what people say and all the different ways they say things, and background and inflection and tone and omission, and we just we have to be really careful not to go there, because we hinder our ability to do the job that we're supposed to be doing in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Easier said than done, don't get me wrong. Easier said than done.
Yes, absolutely. And so, in addition to sort of trying to practice not judging people, you've also got to work to try and maybe cut through the barriers, the additional noise that's going to be in on the call. Um,
Yeah.
you think about if anyone's ever had interactions with drunk people, which I'm sure almost everybody has, either at a bar or like just walking downtown or what have you.
Or been
Uh,
the drunk person.
or been like nobody here drinks, but some have heard. This is it's water. It's not vodka. I promise. But you've got to uh, overcome those barriers of communication, like slurred speech, maybe wandering thoughts, and try and bring some focus back to people that are not mentally where most of the other people that you'll talk to are.
Yeah, they're just and we all know that under the influence, whether it be drugs or alcohol, or it may even be a medication that is causing them to sound as if they are under the influence of some quote unquote recreational. And that's not for us to determine whether it's recreational or not. In that, well, actually, probably that's not the best way to say it. We should ask the questions to determine whether or not has anyone been drinking? And I think instead of saying, have you been drinking? Are you drunk? Are you drunk? You been sipping? Any of the things that we could say with any of the tone, just stick to your questions the way that you would ask them regardless,
Hmm.
right? Has anyone been drinking or doing any drugs today? And let them tell you if they have. Now, if you have legit reason to believe based on something that they have said, okay, then you have to go in and ask your questions directly. But I would say stick to the script. Ask the questions the way you would ask them of anyone else. What do you think?
Oh yeah, yeah, and you want to be professional about it because sometimes you may have to
Hmm.
ask them point blank, like, "Have you been drinking?" Because
Sure.
different agencies are going to have different policies on this. But for example, like at our agency, if you've been drinking, you can't really be evaluated for like mental health concerns in the same way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that answer will affect how officers may respond to the situation.
Sure.
So it is critical information to know, but as you said, you're doing it as more of a fact finding to
Yeah.
understand what's going on.
That's yes, yes. Thank you. That's what I was missing. That's really what we're doing. We're interviewing. We're
Yeah.
interviewing, not so much interrogating, but we are interviewing. We are conducting the very first interview in what will will potentially end up being an investigation of sorts. We are
Hmm.
the first ones to ask any questions and begin to paint the picture for the officers responding or the medical personnel or even
Hmm.
fire personnel that will be responding. And if anybody's been drinking, I'm not having never done that discipline, and by which I mean fire. I would imagine if there's alcohol on the premises, that's going to play a part in how they respond, knowing that there's other flammable liquids other than what would be household cleaners involved or something. It's still important that you ask those questions, especially as a primary PSAP like we are. We're going to get the initial calls anyway, and we'll continue. Even if we have to transfer to the fire department, we're still entering information as we get it.
Hmm. Yeah, and it can also give you clues as to some of the directions the call may go. So if somebody's drinking, if your caller's drinking, and say they had a minor fender bender, you're not going to tell them to just exchange information and then have the insurance companies handle it. That one will definitely
That,
need an officer out there.
yeah, that's going to change things just a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and not necessarily because we want to get them in trouble, not unnecessarily of that either, but primarily it's for the safety of themselves as well as make sure they don't hit anybody else on the road.
Yeah, I was going to say if they if they're under the influence of anything that would impair their ability to operate a motor vehicle, then we need to know that. Because as much as we would hope that, everybody arrives home safely to their destination, blah, 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 if we don't if we don't ask the right questions and if we don't relay the right information as it's been given to us, that may or may not happen. And we don't want to be the reason.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want
Yep.
to be the reason. And it's not rude to ask flat out. If you're new to the industry, you're new to call taking and interviewing, it is not rude to ask that question. It's not a personal. It's not a
Yeah.
personal question.
Yeah.
It's
It's,
one we need to know the answer to.
it's not personal, it's business, as they say in The
Yes,
Godfather.
literally, literally that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Kind of moving on from the intoxicants like drinking, you also
Sure.
have other drugs that affect people. So, like you've got hallucinogens. You know,
Yeah.
uh, they always say that marijuana is a much more potent drug than it used to be, 20, 30 years ago.
That's very true. Yeah, it's
And
not the same.
yeah, and fun fact for you. So, just how drugs are kind of like, I don't want to say getting less pure, but like they get mixed with other drugs a lot. Um, According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, the number of pills that law enforcement had seized in 2017 that contained trace amounts of like fentanyl on it was around 50,000, and
Ouch.
in 2023 it was 115 million. So, like, there's been a
Unreal.
conglomeration. Yeah, there's been sort of a conglomeration of different drugs. You don't know what you're necessarily getting. So
Yeah,
the
it's not the way it used to be.
yeah. So like if your caller is like having hallucinations or terrors or that kind of thing, that's going to also affect how you can kind of take the call because they may become even more of an unreliable witness.
Very much so. And that information, just like with the other types of I don't know, influencers, if you will, you're still asking the questions and you're still relaying the information, but you are, I would say, less judgment and less discounting too, right? So if they're starting to go off the deep end and starting to talk about flying Martians and, all kinds of weird things, or watching fairies walking around or flying around their heads, I know it sounds like it's kind of out there, but that information needs to go in the call
Hmm.
because that's going to tell the officers responding, we may be dealing with some EDP, but we also may be dealing with something else,
Right.
even if they don't tell you that they're under the influence of something.
Hmm. Yeah, and as a call taker, your job is to like listen for all the clues that you can hear because
Hmm.
you've only got the one sense, your sense of sound, of hearing, your
Yeah.
sense of sound, to sort of rely on. So you've got to really make sure that you're picking up all those cues about what's going on, and
Hmm.
trying to ascertain as much as you can so the responding officers keep themselves safe and the the caller and anybody else involved in the call as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard. I have had calls in my career where, I've heard them say I've taken or I've done cocaine or I've been drinking or I've done a combination.
Hmm.
And I've shared that, but none scare me more than when I hear PCP,
Yeah, yeah.
because that one changes the game completely. You're
Hmm.
talking about the potential for someone to be, you're talking about potentially superhuman strength, where normally it would take one, maybe two officers to subdue this person. Now it may take five
Yeah, and like
or six.
and like pain techniques, like pressing nerves and like even whacking people in the knee with a baton. Uh,
That stuff doesn't
yeah,
work.
yeah. Tasers a lot of times won't work when they're on PCP. Like
Hmm.
it becomes a very very dangerous situation when they have excited delirium like that.
Delirium. Yeah. And I was going to say that that's really what that um, official, I don't know, descriptor word, or that's what we call that. And if you are newer, right, and you've never taken a call like that, it is it's super important that you find out as much information as you can about that. If it's a friend or a family that you're talking to, you know, without judgment and without becoming aggressive or being less than professional, you still have to ask those questions and you still have to relay every piece of information. And if you're dispatching, if you see PCP in a call and the officer doesn't pick up on it, you have to pick up on it. And you're no longer sending one or two like you typically would. There is, when you're dealing with PCP, there is no such animal as I'll advise or I don't need cover. However, you say that at your agency, that's going to be a no. You send several, and that's when you most likely ought to start thinking about making some notifications. Obviously, follow your agency's SOPs and whatever policies you have, but just a best practice. Wouldn't you agree, Gary? You start saying, hey, more than one, more than two, and sometimes maybe even more than three need to go because they're going to need some help. Because
Yeah.
if this person is on this, they're going to get there and their regular, like Gary said, their regular techniques are not going to work.
Yeah, you're going to need, probably maybe even half the squad or the whole squad, depending on how big your squads are, I guess.
It's
Yeah,
insane what
and,
happens there.
yeah, and you're again, follow your agency's policies, but a lot of times you're also going to probably want to clear an ambulance as well to go out there because
Yeah, even
person's
if you have them just stage, right?
yeah. Although I will say that you typically won't. I can't think of a time where I ever had a caller that was the person under the influence of PCP.
That's true. I'm trying to think. Have I don't think so. I don't think I have either. Huh. That would
Because
be interesting, especially if you're watching this on YouTube later, if you have been the person on the phone with the someone that is under the influence. I would be curious to know what the difference is.
yeah, it just seems like usually people that have taken that particular drug, especially, are not going to be the ones apt to call 911. But yeah, as Erica said, like
I mean,
it surely it's happened at some point, and
I'm sure somebody in all the however many of us there are out there, you probably have that number in your head somewhere. How many telecommunicators?
I,
100,000?
I think there's about 300,000 in the United States.
Okay, see, I was very,
Yeah,
somebody's bound to have talked to someone. I just don't know if they would be listening to our show, but that would be so interesting to know what the difference is because I cannot, and I'm going back in my memory as far back as I can. I can't think of a time when I've talked to the person that was actually on the PCP. Usually they're running around,
yeah.
sad to
They've,
say, with less clothes on.
yeah, they've got other things on their mind rather than calling 911. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's definitely something you're going to want to send more folks to than just the typical disturbance call.
yeah,
But again, it kind of goes back to as the call taker when you're gathering this information, it's not you're not necessarily passing judgment on these people. It's part of your job to get this information so that the responding units know what they're walking into because
sure.
they're gonna go much differently to a call with excited delirium than they would to just maybe two people yelling at each other.
Yeah, and it turns out that they've been drinking since early this morning. They probably can just hang back a little bit and they'll both eventually pass out. But something like this excited delirium is a whole other ball game. And I'm glad you said that. Maybe clear an ambulance and just obviously depending on your policies at your agency, but I can't see how that would be a bad idea. Just having them on standby, even if you just notify EMS and let them make the call if that's how it works
Yeah.
at your agency.
With these kind of callers, though, we not necessarily the PCP ones, but mainly the drunk ones. You'll sometimes get callers that call multiple times to just either talk to somebody, harass
Hmm.
people, try and make prank calls, and they think it's funny, and you're
It's really
like, I know
not.
exactly who you are, buddy. So how do you kind of deal with those callers that are maybe intoxicated or something like that, and they're calling 911 just to mess with the call takers, basically?
Well, because they're just, so basically what you're describing to me is the drunk dial.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
know they're calling. Nobody else is awake. Nothing else to do, or their boyfriend broke up with them, or the girlfriend broke up with them, the dog left me and I'm crying in my beer. That whole thing,
sounds like a country song.
it sounds like a country song. Absolutely. Best storytellers ever. But anyway, you know, I don't know that I've had that one where they call basically the prank, but I have had the woe is me, life is so awful. I just need someone to talk to. And I found the best thing to do there is if you can, just let them go for a few minutes and then get off the phone as quickly as you can after you have determined that all they want is to talk to somebody because the boyfriend left them and they're crying in their beer or whatever. But obviously you're still asking your questions to find out, is there more?
Hmm.
You still never assume that what it is, you never take any call at face value. You still dig.
Yeah, and you want to make sure that there's nothing untoward going on or anybody needs actual help. It's just somebody wanting to talk, and you may have resources at your disposal for people that can kind of help with that. But generally, like as we said, those that are under the influence really can't be evaluated for mental health kind of issues.
I was gonna say, so sending them over to, like in our case, C3 may not be the thing to do per
Yeah,
se.
but no, yeah, I
I,
think
j-
you're
I just let them go.
yeah. If you can let them talk it out for a little bit, and just like in real life, if you're dealing with a drunk person, especially if it's somebody you
Don't
know, and
argue.
don't argue with them, and just let them talk it out, and say, okay, you know what would be really good? Why don't you go to sleep? Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Or or I've said, I really would like to just talk to you some more, but I'm sure you probably remember this is 911 and I've got some other calls I've got to answer. And half the time they'll go, "Oh, you're right. You're right.
mhm,
Yeah, you're right." And then they'll go launch into their thing again, and then you just redirect them back around. I know. And I wish I had time, but again, I've got some calls that I've got to take, or Mary, or John, or whatever their name is. And
mhm.
that technique still works. Still treat it goes a long way by using their first name, treating them with that respect as a human being. Just because they're intoxicated doesn't mean that they're not still a member of the public that we serve.
Yeah, and
They just toe up from the floor up. That's all.
yeah, and you kind of hit on a good point, which whenever we talk about the call takers, is I think always the point you want to understand is you're redirecting whatever that emotion is on the phone to get to the information you need, the outcome you want, and you're staying calm and collected while whatever's happening. So if you're talking to a drunk person, you're redirecting them to understand, hey, this is an emergency line, go to sleep, or talking to a hysterical person, hey, this is, you're redirecting that energy that they bring into the conversation to a productive outlet, namely getting
Yeah.
that information you need, and that's pretty much, I think, really all the key to all 911 calls is how
Yeah.
can I redirect this energy that's uh, that this person has on the other end of this line to do to make something useful out of it.
To get the best possible outcome for everyone, because we don't again, depending on the policy at your agency, you don't want to send officers unnecessarily if it's not something that they would go to. But for us, we enter a call regardless, even if it ends up being just information. But we have to be pretty doggone sure that it's just information if that's what we're going to do.
Hmm.
Um, but you're right. No matter what, like you said, we are redirecting and making something useful out of whatever that is. If they're intoxicated, I think personally, intoxication is probably one of the easier ones versus being on some other form of drug or something. PCP, there's no reasoning in that situation. I think that's mainly if you're the call taker, get good information, get solid information, and boil it down to something that the dispatcher can get out quickly and get the officers prepared to respond to. As many as you can possibly send is what you're going to need. Hopefully, don't allow anything to trigger you. If you've got anything that bugs you about it, suppress it. Because I think we all have things, right? There's things in this conversation that if it were me on the other end at a 911 situation, it would trigger. It would trigger some unhappy things. But hearing it on the other end of the phone, I have to suppress it and I have to press through and continue to serve at the end of the day is really all we're doing.
Right, because you're not representing you. You're representing, your department, whether that be a
Hmm.
police, fire, or EMS department.
Absolutely. Yeah. And first responders at large, whether they be field or not, because we are the first responders as those in the PSAP.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way around that designation, really, whether you
Yeah,
be a primary or secondary PSAP.
yeah, yeah. And as you've often said, it comes with rights, but also responsibilities. So
Yes.
remember what those are and who you're here to serve.
Agreed. Agreed. Well said.
Thank you, thank you. Um, uh, and now we can, I think, hear from some of our fans who have sent in some questions. If you are ready, Erica.
Dun, 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 dun. I'm ready.
Ding ding, mailbag's here. It's the sound we love to hear. Quick and bright, the vibe is clear. Let's read your words with a cheer.
All right. Gummy Wummy 97 asks, how do dispatchers deal with prank calls or abusive callers without letting it affect their focus for the next call?
That's a two-parter. The prank is just that. It's a prank, and you may realize that it's a prank, but I think, well, actually, it's true in both cases. You don't.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does it affect? Sure, but you can't let it stop you from doing what needs to be done. So even if you know it's you have questions or interview skills, use your critical thinking skills to determine whether or not this is absolutely ludicrous. And if there's a chance it could be valid, enter the call as per your SOPs at your agency and go on. As far as rude, we were talking about this earlier, and I don't want to spoil it for the next episode that we may do because I think we're doing one soon on the emotional impact of people being rude. But easier said than done. It's not about you.
Mm-hmm.
Eh,
Yeah.
I wish I had something better, but it's not.
I remember when I first became a call taker, I had a call where these people called in and they said, there's somebody with a machine gun and they're shooting, and which is like a crazy thing to hear,
Wow.
have somebody say to
Okay.
you. And then I heard ta 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 ta, and it sounded like gunfire on the line.
Oh, wow.
And officers got out there, and it was at a phone booth. They still had those back then, which was like a place where you'd go to make a call, like you'd put a quarter in.
And like Superman would go into the booth and okay, they probably don't even have that. We're
That,
dating
I'm not
ourselves,
that old,
Gary.
It was just like, yeah,
I am.
but they just had like a string of black cat fireworks and set them off, and it
Oh,
it
that's just
sounds,
messed up.
yeah, it sounds legit on the other side, but
That's just mean.
it used a lot of resources for a little bit. But yeah, like you
Yeah.
take, as you said, you take the call and you then go on to the next one because that's all you can do.
Yeah, you cuss a blue streak after you hang up.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
From Laguna Lynn asks, are dispatchers allowed to give legal advice if someone asks what their rights are during a call?
Absolutely not. How can I say that? No. You give zip, zilch, nada, no advice whatsoever. I strongly encourage you, ma'am or sir, to seek licensed legal counsel. At best, you can Google. There's bound to be some resource or another out there to help you if you don't have the money for it. But I, as a civilian, cannot give you any legal advice.
Absolutely, yeah. I 100% agree with that. The only things that you should be telling people are things that are part of your policies and SOPs. So, in the state of Texas, if you have a minor collision, you're to move the vehicles off of the roadway to keep the roadway clear. In the state of New York, if you have a minor collision, you're to leave the cars on the roadway so an accident investigation can be conducted. So just
That is
to
insane to me. Wow. Okay.
it's a little strange to me too, but
Okay.
whatever your policies and procedures are, that's going to be the limit of any legal advice you should give because first off, our job isn't the judicial part of
Nope.
what's happening. We're
Nope.
keep everybody safe, secure, catch the bad guys. What happens after that is not our purview, and
Nope. Nope.
don't make it your purview.
Agreed.
Butterscotch Scott says, if my cell phone dies mid-call to 911, can you still track me or send help to where I was?
Well, we get up to the point that you hung up. We'll get that, but after the call is gone, that's it.
Yeah.
Am I wrong? That's it, right? Once we've lost it, because I think even with as many nifty things as we have now, like what 3 words and rapid SOS, and I mean, you name it, we can get to a few meters of you now. But once the call drops, if you keep moving, that's that.
Yeah.
Unless we ping. Now we might be able to ping, but then that's a whole other thing. Calling the cell phone company and getting the ability to ping you as you're continuing to move. That's a little bit next level. Some agencies can do that. It's a little bit of we have to jump through a few hoops for our end.
Yeah, because most of the time, getting like a location on a call on a cell phone, especially if it has not recently called 911, is
It'll be a
considered.
challenge.
Well, yeah, it's considered kind of a search warrant. So, according to the Fourth Amendment, you need to have a judge on that. A lot of centers nowadays have phase 2 technologies, which
Yeah.
kind of give you that information. But once your cell phone dies, it's really not going to
Oh, it was
transmit.
dead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I
No, it's
misunderstood
all
the question. I thought it's like it dropped, as in
Yeah.
like the call hung up, but it was still like alive, meaning you still had juice. But if it dies, shuts off altogether, yeah, it's different. My bad.
I will say, many years ago, probably like 2010, 2012 era, I was working and got a call from a guy who's like, hey, my daughter is like not answering her cell phone. I'm concerned about her. Would you go send a unit to check on her? I think she might be like at a place she's not supposed to be at, like a party or something like that. And I was like, okay, do you have her cell phone number? And he gave it to me. And I was like, have you tried like calling her? And he was like, her phone's out of juice. And I was like, well, how do you know that she's at this party then? And he said, I work for an agency that is able to track phones even if they're off. And I normally wouldn't do this, but I am very concerned about my daughter. And
So you breaking all kind of rules and stuff.
anyway, she turned out to be there. So I don't know if this guy was crazy or maybe telling me the truth. But, you know, you get to hear all kinds of interesting things, you know.
So I need closure. How? What agency? So many questions, Gary.
I decided not to ask any because, you know, there was no way that would go well for me.
Fine.
Where are we at?
Okay.
Oh, and our last question is from Blue Kinji Nakaguma. Asks, is there a standard script you follow when guiding someone through CPR over the phone?
Yes. There are I think there's more than one program, but the one that I'm most familiar with is, oh my God, and I just drew a blank. What is it?
I guess she's not that familiar with it.
I still have that there. It just was gone. It was right there, and I was like, "Bam, it's there!" And then it was just anyway. ProQA. When it comes to CPR instructions, they are very specific. We don't deviate. If you are in the state of Texas, most recently there has been a law passed where we all have to be CPR certified to give CPR instructions over the phone, but not all agencies do that. But if you find yourself, or if you call into 911 and that person is giving them in this state, it is very, very, very well scripted. ProQA is the most familiar one, and I don't know the names of any others, but there's a thing called EMD, Emergency Medical Dispatch, that governs the questions that are asked, and they have to be asked a certain way in a certain order, and that is how it's done without getting too technical.
Yeah, it's very orderly and very precise, and does not there's a right way to do it, and all the other ways are wrong. I mean, like,
agreed. Yeah,
they do have updates to techniques that come out from time to time. So for a while, like, it was like, do you help them breathe? Do you not help them breathe? And that sometimes, it's kind of like eggs. Are they good for you? Are they bad for you?
It just seems to go back and forth. But you know what? And to be fair, medicine is not an exact, right? As time passes, they realize in some cases it's probably best to do this, in some cases not best to do that. And the reason why they follow that advice so to the letter is you cannot afford to have one person's opinion on what medical advice to deliver differ with somebody else's. And then now you have conflicting, and it's not being done. The standard of care isn't standard anymore.
Right. Well, we hope that you all cared for us today and enjoyed listening in on the episode. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to shoot us an email to lifeline911podcast@gmail.com, or leave a comment below, and we'll be happy to get back to you on that.
Don't forget to subscribe.
And don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button, as the kids say.
Yes.
From all of us at Lifeline 911, I'm Gary.
I'm Erica.
And we will see you next week.
Thank you for watching our production of Lifeline 911. If you have any questions about today's topic or topics you'd like us to cover in the future, please reach out to us at lifeline911podcast@gmail.com. This has been a production of Lifeline 911 Podcast, copyright 2025. From all of us at Lifeline, stay safe out there. And until next time, this is Lifeline 911 signing off.